Okay. Hi. Thanks for joining us again. I am the Rebel, Daniel Patrick Welch, written and spoken on geopolitics and a bunch of other stuff. If you've seen me before, you know my style and how I like to speak out. Um, I'm. It's vacation for me, such as it is, hence the new growth. But I did want to speak on this because it's such a huge thing. It's become, I don't know, I haven't, I've seen it everywhere. And the thing that bothers me is that there's so much that I've already said for the last 40 years. And writing, if you find some articles or videos or interviews, whatever, um, it's shocking in a weird sort of way and a little depressing that so little changes on this front. Yet it's really important to keep saying what we've been saying for a very long time. And everybody was so into this. You can't find stuff on anything else. In fact, I'll get to that in a moment on what else is happening here. But this thing about the summit, and I that's why I called this the summit craters because it just like you know uh, fell into itself like a volcano. Might as well be Mount Edgecombe. That's not the summit. I don't think they were looking for. They is not really fair or appropriate. It's Trump. Trump wanted this. Trump. I was part of one of a gang on the left who's been thinking and talking about this for a while, and was very nervous. Like, why is Putin going for this? What do they have to gain? They've always they haven't changed. They have not changed their demands from the beginning. The reasons for entering into this special military operation are exactly the same as they were on that day. And the U.S. and its vassals have not pledged to change a single framework, a single, uh, minute of it. And yet, we're in a position where you have all these people demanding negotiations. Now, remember what you're talking about here. This is the losing side. Okay, is everyone listening? I don't know. I know that the whole Western press isn't listening, and you see rogue comments about how Ukraine blew up all of Australia in the name of Zelensky or whatever you can fit on Telegraph or squeeze into YouTube. And it's not nobody's buying it except for some parts of the Western narrative matrix because it's all crap. This is visible from space. This is the Russian Federation army marching slowly and inexorably to the West. That's what they do. That's what is happening now and has been happening for a couple of years with glitches and moves and certain pauses and everything else. But what Trump wanted was, first of all, it's really important because no matter who talks about this, they try to separate the kind of domestic from the global, and I don't really think that that's possible. First of all, let's be honest: the Democrats and the Republicans are on the same page. They've always had the same agenda. That's the problem. That's why so many people don't vote for either of them, and why someone can be in what they claim is a landslide or a full vote with a plurality, with 49% of the vote, even though they got more than the other guy or girl, whatever. But this is the crux of the American point of view in this thing, is the blend of those two. And so Trump has started this as a means of distraction from the horrible, his personal unpopularity, the Epstein files, which are just never, ever, ever going away, and his idea of how that is going to play out for him, and it's always about him, for him. But you see this from the Russian point of view. I got used to the idea. Okay, fine. Putin wants to go because, hey, you know what? He's marching into this. First of all, for the first time on U.S. territory in 10 years or so, as an equal, which he is, as the spokesman for what is coming close to being 60% of the world population through the BRICS countries, which he is. And he made sure that that was true by calling them the day before he went. Before he was in the air, he let Lula and Modi and Xi Jinping and Pezeshkian know that he is going to this summit. Probably, I don't know. I don't know what he said. I'm not an expert in tapping phones or anything, but I assume that he told them, "Don't worry. This is Trump's idea. It's what we do is we stand tall, stand together, and show ourselves to be a force that cannot be dismissed. We collectively have been dismissed for 500 years, and we're not going to do it anymore." So he comes in, he visits Alaska. I don't want to make the same mistakes that President Trump made and call it by the wrong national name. But Alaska has long been part of Russia, and Russia still has huge cultural and religious ties to a lot of the folks in Russia. So he got to give the parts to a motorcycle that some guy in Anchorage couldn't get because of the sanctions. He got to stop at a Soviet cemetery and stand there at each grave and put down the roses and crossed himself and moved on to the next one, all completely legit. I mean, obviously, this is Vladimir Putin. He knows what he's doing. He wasn't the head of the KGB because he was just good at math. This guy knows optics from better than any optometrist that I have ever met. And trust me, I've met many of them over the course of my long life. He stopped at a city in the northeast of Russia, which everyone, the West loves to say doesn't exist, isn't really part of Russia, should be carved up into different countries and sold off, whatever, like, extra meat or something, to check on the development and industrialization there, and just flying over the vast 11 time zones, the vast world geography that he sits over, and the incredible resources that are inherent in the trip from Moscow to Anchorage is mind-boggling if anyone has to see it. And I think that the fact that it happened in Alaska was on purpose. And he gave his little neighborly thing. People can think that that's like a little between lecturing Uncle Know-It-All and Uncle Schmarmy, who always has to make up an anecdote. The Diomedes are really only 4 miles apart. But nothing happened except for the handshake, the red carpet, and the flight. Seriously. And that was exactly what the Russians knew would happen. They brought their big guns and whatever. I still, again, I don't know what the general staff says. I'm not a military expert, I don't have eyes and ears on the wall. But in that 3 hours, I can guarantee that they told them, look, there is not a ceasefire. All they had to do was repeat the speech from June of 24 or from December of 21 or going back to the Munich Security Conference in 2018. I don't even remember anymore. This is what has been the Russian perspective from forever. And so, because of that, it is difficult to imagine what came out of it and then watch the follow-up, the panic that completely overtook the Western cabal. This is Starmer and Merz and Macron and all the other ones, because it is all the other ones. It's the big three. And then the rest, like an old soundtrack to Gillian's Island, and the rest. And when you see them getting together then to sort this all out, you can see that this is an internecine struggle, a kind of a card game between Europe and the US. And it's not a definitive one. They're like fighting over who gets to carry the football, not about which direction they're headed or anything. That's the thing. They are the collective West. The Europeans have absolutely zero now that they've sold themselves as a complete lackey of the West since the end of World War II, and the rebuild of Europe. That's already been done, and the only way that they can continue is to continue to kiss Trump's ass. And you saw this thing. I mean, the pictures are great, but I don't think the photographers knew exactly what they were doing. The picture of them all sitting in the hallway like kids, being called to the principal's office one by one. Then the picture of them around the table. It is just unbelievable to see. Let's see, them sitting around the table. What is really hilarious, because my wife and I just got finished watching the third section of Squid Game, and we had a debate about what it reminded us of. And we thought we were talking along the same lines. I thought that these guys looked like the overseers with their binoculars, their opera glasses, looking at, oh look, 456 is doing something, and he's climbing up and he's fighting back. This is good to watch. These are the oligarchs who paid their share to watch this shit show, this human game, right? And my wife countered that note. She thought it looked like they were the players who were basically doomed on the set and arguing, fighting as if they had the right to decide the fate of this baby. There's a baby here. And all of a sudden that becomes the center of this game. And it has no relevance to what's going on in the larger game, that these are all pawns. They're vassals at best. They are watchers of what is beyond their control, is actually the kinder way to put it, I guess, what I had put myself into. The other side is that they are participants in this deadly game that none of them has the cards to. And when you go up to what they've been doing for this whole time, what do the Europeans, what do they have to offer? And what comes out of this? And I think that one of the reasons I waited a couple of days, because I wanted to see, because there was this big thing about the new new summit and how Trump wanted this to happen and Zelensky wanted to come in and Trump wanted him to come in alone. They were going to come in as his phalanx. All this kind of silly, really stuff. It's like organizing a wedding or a party and seating arrangements. And Uncle Ralphie is never going to sit next to his sister-in-law because remember, they hate each other. All of that crap that goes on and doesn't really speak to the overall setting, which is marketing, basically branding. And Trump is one in a true fight for his life in rebranding himself from the kind of woman abusing playboy, oligarch, do what you want, F you, non-statesman in New York who everyone hated, right? To being the spokesman of this movement to make America great again. And he hates the idea of that branding being disrupted. So he has to fight that with everything he can. And this is one of the shiniest distractions that he can muster. Then he comes up with, this is Biden's war. This is what I'm saying is that tension between the U.S. and Europe is a bit of an allegory to the tension within the U.S. between Dems and Repubs, because that's basically what it is. They're fighting about the size of the pie that they control, used to control, want to control, are choosing who gets what. And there's no real difference in what they say. And that is called to account by Trump's disgusting, really, use of this branding of Biden's war. It's a ridiculous thing because he was the one who gave them the first Patriots in long range or advanced weapons and bragged about it, oversaw, knew about where these CIA bases in eastern Ukraine were going to be built. They were. Mariupol was a CIA base. Kharkov was a CIA base, and probably Pokrovsk. It's the last node in that chain. They were, and the whole West is behind this. That's what NATO is. It's the inheritor of Operation Gladio. And to come after it and expect that something will change in that basic function is delusional. Not just in the way that it's just wishful thinking or too hopeful, but it's ahistorical. It's not about the previous president. Really? Are you the kid from Memento? You really have like a 4-year history is all you can come up with as a leader of the free world, right? You're going to tell the rest of the world that the last 7 years in history is what is responsible for all the problems you're suffering right now. How like ridiculous and full of shit can you be that you would follow that narrative? Obviously, these were the leave behind. Banderite gangs were already there at the end of the war and before the CIA even existed. When you had OSI and NATO even before were coming up with the leave behind operations to continue to be a thorn in Russia's side. There's no doubt about any of this now. And that will continue. Who do you think planned the attack on the airfields? They couldn't do that. They can't do that without operational control from the sky and from the West. That's how it happened. And no matter what comes out of this, that's going to continue. Remember that, folks. Operation Gladio is up and running in whatever suit they put on it right now. Terror attacks against Russia, Chechnya, everything, all the Dagestani madrasa type stuff. Come on. They're never going to give that up. Look right now what's happening in the Zangezur corridor, right? $100 billion to split up Iran and Russia, to make a chink in that corridor, that small connection in the South Caucasus, Moldova, the elections, already the last elections, certainly the next ones. This is not something the West is going to give up. But you have to remember that, because when you think of what the Russians are doing, how Putin might respond, how the general staff might respond, how the people might respond, you have to remember more than 4 years of history. I'm sorry. Sit up straight, right? Bring in your homework, put on your uniform, and get ready for history class, kids. This is not a 4-year assignment. It's a 400-year assignment. And some of the things just don't change. So when I say that, not just to people listening, to myself too, because I get a little, nervous. I always get nervous. Do you? Comment down below if you understand what I'm talking about. The Russians are holding their own. The Russians are going to show it to them. Oh God, oh God, oh God. Now they're going to, what they keep saying, our partners, our Western partners, Americans, why are they kissing up to the West? And up until, a couple of years ago, they did way too much of that for my taste, right? But then I have to remember that it's not my world. It's partly, but they have to make their way. And I know this is not a resuscitation of the Soviet Union, no matter what the West wants to pretend. It is not a substitution of the general staff and the CKPSS, Central Committee Коммунистической партии Советского Союза. There we go. Central Committee of the Soviet Union Communist Party. No, it's a country of its own, way before all that and way after that, and they are going to. Oh my God! I have an actual person. I'm sorry. I'm so bad at this that I have a hard time with all the tech stuff, and I forget that I'm actually live because I only have a few viewers. I'll have more. Right? And I would like you to subscribe and pass on the link and all that. So H&R just asking, what if the dollar failed? The physical stack of $100 billionaires. The thing is, they do not depend on their own dollar. They have gold, they own islands, they have assets that have value. And the one thing that people forget in all of this is who's on what side. And those people sitting around the table are all pimps or Johns or owners of the whole thing. We use the term oligarch when we talk about the bad people's billionaires. But billionaires, when we we say it about Westerners and Americans, and the only people who ever got got painted with that broad brush are Gordon Gekko and Bernie Madoff, right? Who made off with everyone's money, and that was bad. And Gordon Gekko was bad, but that's only in retrospect, because the 80s that fueled this huge upswing, and now with the pandemic, another huge upswing in ownership of stifling of distribution. You wouldn't believe it. I'm not on that kick at the moment, and I'm not good enough to pull up this chart and the incredible exponential line of ownership of wealth in this country. But just so you know, you wouldn't believe it. You think that it makes sense. Oh yeah, you get rich and you own more, and it's not quite fair. It's worse than any of that. The bottom half owns 1% of anything, and the bottom 80% own 3.5% or something like that. 30%. So, we are struggling against all this, and the people around the table there are all the doomsayers and the owners of all that wealth. And one of the things people I was watching with said in the first, like, it's been an hour and there's no mention of Israel. These people are talking about peace, a peace deal. These are people who've given hundreds of billions of dollars in weapons to Ukraine, also to Israel, and have flashed the green light for Israel to do whatever it can and wants for the last 50, 70 years. This is who do they think they are? And the answer is they are whoever they can convince the world that they are. And another friend of mine who said, look at this group. There's not a drop of melanin in the whole room. Right. And I had to laugh, it's a guy. I'm white, as far as I know, is what we pinkish people call ourselves. But my wife is not. Certainly, the 53 countries in Africa to whom China just recently offered a 0% tariff. The India with 1.4 billion people is not on that same page. They would never be invited to that room. They don't belong in that room. And this is the difference. This is the difference between now and the end of the Second World War, or the industrial beginning of the industrial era, or late 1890s, and that stuff. When we're talking about tariffs and global trade and all that, is that there was never any choice. And so you could make all these demands, these ridiculous, idiotic demands that Trump is making. And Trump is, when I talk about the uncles, he would be the uncle jackass, the guy you didn't want to invite to the wedding, but you had no choice, right? Because he rented the hall or something, or paid for most of it or whatever. But is also just blathers on. You can't stand it. And he forces everyone away. Now, for many years, Russians and Chinese have been, even the Indians to some extent, have been tenderfooting around the U.S. out as the crazy uncle that you don't want to piss off too much, because then he could retaliate and then you really have nowhere to run. Look at what happened in Libya and Syria. Now, that's not going to happen in Iran, because Russia decided it wasn't going to happen in Ukraine. It's not going to happen in Taiwan, and it's not going to happen in the world from now on. And that is an unbelievable thing for the global South to actually embrace. And that's why most of them agree with Russia at having this provocation, your next door neighbor trying to provoke you with stuff that he borrowed from his neighbor. I mean, well, no, far away neighbor. And there is nowhere for them to go. When I still have a bit of that scaredness. I don't know what comes out of this, because we don't yet know. All we know is the lies, and of course they're lies. We see the West Side making the Sunday talk show roundup, and Witkoff and Rubio or whoever talking about how Russia agreed to this and Russia agreed to this. I'm scratching my head thinking, Russia agreed to security guarantees? That sounds exactly like NATO. And they mention Article 5 type guarantees. So anyone who knows anything about anything, I mean, NATO is Article 5. That's the point of NATO. That's the danger of NATO. That's why you don't want NATO in your goddamn room or anywhere near you. Because Article 5 is the piece that says if you attack one of us, you attack all of us, and we all get to respond as if it's a direct attack on all of the 22 countries that we include. And that is complete crap. There's no way. That is the whole point of this war. The Russians will never accept anything that looks or feels or sounds or smells like that. And if you're on the point of view that I'm on, give or take a few degrees, I don't really care if you agree with everything, but if you understand that the Russians have been acting rationally, it doesn't make sense that they would react in that way. Putin has already said that it was a mistake to take the Europeans at their word when Merkel admitted that it was a lie to buy time, that Minsk was never serious, Minsk was never going to be put into implementation as a treaty, and it was never going to work. And so the people who have been screwed by this are going to turn around and take you at your word this time? And look at the crackpot salesman that you have standing up for you now. Are you going to buy a used car from this idiot? I mean, come on. It doesn't make any sense. And what you have is a lazy, bored, and completely compassless press who is more of a stenography pool for the ruling class and for the Western elites. But also, they keep writing about the same thing, and they keep teaching and retraining people's minds in this same thing, when no one will confront the actual questions. The Russia-China thing is over. The question is what we do next. And Trump is just trying to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. And that's not even about his domestic agenda, which is also evil, and racist. There's no question about that, guys. Don't get me started yet. I have that in another video. That is not going to happen if you just isolate America. Screw the Europeans, all our old allies, and just try to do it on your own. That's what it is. This is like pull up the lifeboats, say there's no room, and we're going to go on our own. It's not working because it was never going to work. It's been over for 50 years, slowly dwindling. And now you have the Uncle Jackass who makes it okay for the people to say, well, then screw you. Okay, then. The hell with the dollar. The only thing we don't want is for it to crash overnight so that we are not sucked down with you. But we don't have to be polite anymore. And we don't have to do what you say anymore. And those are enormous changes. Enormous. I just wanted, I love this thing. What a friend of mine, John Jeter, thought of when I got that not a drop of melanoma in the room, because he's a writer, friend. He wrote Class War just recently. And he said, I believe the white supporters of empire are experiencing the psychotic break that occurs when weak-minded people who are accustomed to bullying everyone who gets in their way, come to understand that they made a power move on Russia and got mollywopped. Russia has spanked that ass from day one, and there is not a goddamn thing that NATO can do to stop Russia. Sort of like the tailspin that George Foreman went into after Ali rope-a-doped him and whooped his ass. Right? Thank you, John. He said that property is intellectual property. I told him not to tell the lawyers before I quoted him, but I'll add a link in the description here. This is not something that is gonna go away or change. Trump is using it as a distraction. Putin is just going to say, all right, well, this isn't that big a deal. Okay, we'll go and we'll shake hands and see if Trump tries his handshake judo, because Putin knows judo. Anyway, I'm up to 34 minutes. This could go on forever. I have subtext to discuss and go into that I won't bother. Please I'll learn how to call up other things, and I could do more of it if I had some money. So, buy me a coffee, buy me a drink. What is it? A drink? Pack of cigarettes? It's just a coffee or two. Do that. That'll work. Subscribe. Tell your friends. Invite your uncles, even the bad ones. And we'll go into this again soon. Thanks for watching, and enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.